challenge means to me that we all need to be intentional in our actions in order to make a difference. That this issue of inequality and gender bias is not a women's issue, it's a human issue, and all people need to choose to challenge. In my life, to overcome gender bias and inequality, I see, as the proud mother of 2 boys, my role is to educate them, to make them aware of gender bias and inequality in our society by sharing my stories, by pointing it out when I see it in pop culture. And it is my hope that these small but important discussions with them will enable them to choose to challenge as they grow up. My advice to other female leaders would be, if you see inequality or gender bias happening to yourself or to others, do not be silent. Speak up. It is important that we bring this conversation to the forefront, that we do not remain silent.
So I think human perception and cognition is limited. So we have blind spots all around us, which makes it difficult for us to really see and understand each other's perceptions. You know, we often forget that we're sculptors in the world, and what we do really affects everyone else. So choose to challenge for me means changing perception and understanding by breaking through those blind spots. And I think the best way to do that is by engaging in open dialogue about gender bias and inequality.
As you know, I have been running Women in Leadership Club since 2018. Today, Women in Leadership is a Hanson student female community. We provide opportunities for girls to recognize and develop their leadership skills. We help our female students to become role models to other women, to inspire them to make a difference and to become future leaders. So, choose to challenge for me as a leader of female community means to make young female students believe in themselves, develop strong leadership skills, and strive for future success. I believe in the power of education, and that's how Women in Leadership Club tries to promote inclusiveness and equality, offer support to our members. We help to raise self-esteem, highlight achievements, recognize talents, and of course help to develop our girls' networking opportunities.
When I heard that line, which I love, or that theme for this year's International Women's Day, I felt a very close connection to it because if I had a middle name or several middle names, I feel like those that know me, both personally and at work, would know that that would be it. I feel like challenging and the tendency to challenge, to push forward, to dissolve inequalities or to look for better ways of doing things and better methods is really just embedded in my DNA. It is so close to who I am. So I really feel very passionate about that. And I think we can interpret that in many different ways, and all of those interpretations would be valid. But for me, I think the one key thing, and when we're talking about women's rights specifically, is simply to challenge patriarchy. And patriarchy for me is not just how women, unfortunately, still globally are oppressed quite often in many different ways. It is sort of a meta paradigm for humanity. Okay? It means the ways in which we function and the power dynamics in which we find ourselves in, where one small group tends to wield excessive influence over the other. And we see it in everything: women, relationship between women and men, politics, relationship between countries, so many different dynamics. So I think we need to challenge that in whatever way we can, because that is the root cause of everything. And then with a specific focus on women's rights and women's issues as well.
Challenge to me means not accepting inequality, calling out gender bias, and making sure that this no longer affects where you can reach as a woman. It's about taking a stand to create change, stepping up and being a leader for young women who might be watching you. And by taking a stand for ourselves today, who knows who we can empower. I know that the next generation is watching and that the pay gap still exists as a rule in society, but I think that we can choose to challenge it by facing it head on, making a regretful policy of the past.
Ever being aware that I was a target of gender bias or inequality. However, gender bias comes in many forms. For example, there's a dominant male culture that dictates what a leader should look like. And women tend to conform to these norms and, sometimes suppress their own leadership styles. So I believe the best way to challenge this status quo is for men and women to work together and to change the organizational culture of what leadership looks like. I think the key is a commitment to change by challenging these norms when we recognize them.
When I was just starting my career, I remember a situation how my close friend was refused a position at an international enterprise on the grounds of having a small child. And actually, I still remember how awful I felt about her. But that made me ask myself a question. Why people think that it's impossible for a woman to reconcile career and family? Why should we sacrifice our dreams? Why should we lose control of our lives? For me, equality should be in everything. And I promised myself that it won't be an issue of mine. I did it. I do treasure my personal growth today, my work and life balance. I'm not afraid of making decisions, and I strive towards success the way I see it, for myself and for the others around me.
Gender bias and inequality does exist everywhere in the world, to varying degrees and varying contexts. And before I speak about my personal experience, I just want to really acknowledge how differently this is experienced by women. Because I think often women are represented as a homogenous group, and we most certainly are not. We are, united by some things, but we certainly are. There's a lot of differences, even here in Canada, based on our ethnic and cultural background, class, type of profession that we're in, all these factors which are can bring very different challenges and experiences for different women. So I really want to honor that diversity first. And I'd like to say that I think I've been fortunate in terms of my specific upbringing and circumstances, that I don't feel like I have felt it acutely, which doesn't mean that it doesn't exist acutely for different women. I was born in a communist socialist country, former Yugoslavia, which tend to champion women's equality and gender equality. I was born in a family where I was made to feel not just equal, but almost even better than for being a woman. And I know that's such a rare experience for many. And in fact, it's my father who championed myself seeing me that way. But I think the way that I've experienced gender equality and bias is by embodying some of the qualities that women are, unfortunately, still not allowed to have. Okay? We're still not very comfortable with women being direct, being intense, challenging things as I tend to do. So I've faced some, subtle and not so subtle observation of that kind. And my way of dealing with that is simply, quite often directly, addressing that and explaining that, I'm proud of that aspect, and that, we all should be getting more comfortable with it for sure. And the other one is even something as simple as smiling. I culturally, and just as a person, smiling is something that is very sacred and natural to me. I do it when it feels intrinsic. And I think in North America, people are extremely uncomfortable, especially for women, if they don't see that smile all the time. So I've had those comments made, you have such a beautiful smile, why don't you smile more? And many times they are well intended, and I do appreciate that. But at the same time, I think they reflect precisely this kind of discomfort that we have from women not being always accessible, accommodating, and pliant, which I think is how most women are socialized. And I do recall, one instance, even when I was 18, in a summer job where a photographer was taking my picture for a newspaper. They were doing an article on that role, and he said exactly that, how about you, why don't you smile more? And I said, even though I was, only 18, I said, you know what, no, I'm quite fine being like this. I don't feel like smiling right now, and I think that's fine. So I'm pretty sure that neither of these comments, why don't you smile enough, or why are you, direct or intense, have ever been made to a single male, probably on the face of the earth. So this is where we can see that difference. And I think I encourage everyone to challenge it in whatever way they feel comfortable.
faced gender bias in my life from a young age, playing competitive sports. It was always assumed that because I'm female, I would perform as well as my male counterparts. And let me tell you, it was certainly not the case. I could run just as fast, I could slide through the defense better, and I developed incredible dexterity. And during my career in the sales industry, it was always assumed that clients would not see me as knowledgeable or capable compared to my male counterparts. But I always worked really hard to make sure that I knew more than my male counterparts. And if the client asked, I was sure to answer with confidence. And I felt like to be taken seriously in the sales world, I'd have to work 10 times harder than my male counterparts. And no offense to them, but when push came to shove, it taught me to value the details, to be a subject matter expert, and the importance of sharing compassion for my clients. These sentiments I've brought to Hanson College, and encouraging an environment of expertise and compassion for our students is important to me and my team as a leader. And it's from the second that they choose to study with us. We want to make sure we've encompassed that in our world.
Women who are subjected to gender bias or inequality are afraid to say something. I often hear them say, I don't want to lose my job. If I can offer some advice to these women, I'd say be confident, because confidence is power. And it's so powerful that it can break barriers and challenge the status quo. So I think be confident enough to have that dialogue and to change perception, because when you choose to challenge, you're opening doors for future generations.
The message is, you are not alone. Join our World Female League. Regardless of what you do, who you are, communicate, be brave, and be passionate about your success.
Advice would be to follow your instinct on what you think needs to be done for you. No one can tell you in what way you live your life and your struggle when it comes to gender bias and equality. To what issues do you choose to challenge, and in what way? That is a very personal choice. And along with that, I think the best, while we need to recognize, of course, the systemic challenges and inequality and work with that, I think our first primary tool is cultivating a relationship of kindness, acceptance within ourselves. And that may sound like a cliche, but it isn't. It's actually a complicated, ongoing process. It's not something we either get at a certain age and then we're done. Because when we know that we are good enough and worthy enough, regardless of our successes, failures, and outside circumstances, then we are more able to be present in the world and fight for what we would like to fight. So believing in yourself and cultivating a kind, loving relationship with oneself is the key. And also considering yourself worthy to have a seat at the table, any table, literally and metaphorically. Because if you believe that you belong, others will eventually follow suit. Because if you don't believe that you're worthy and that you don't belong, then unfortunately, I think you'll be feeding into those inequalities. And I also think that people should choose goals, some maybe small goals. Like, for example, I would encourage all the women watching this today to pay a compliment to their female colleague today, to do something small and nice for them. And also to choose a macro goal. And the one that I would recommend that I feel passionate about is very prominent in Canada is pay equality. And I would like to see at some point a law passed that would mandate companies to be transparent and to publish pay scales for all employees. So anyone can go in and check and make sure that a woman is paid not 70% of a man's wage, but an equal wage for an equal job done. So that is a personal goal of mine, and one that I encourage women to get behind. And of course, ultimately, it's most important to know what really matters to you in this. In addition to championing that women are allowed to be direct and to be assertive, which is what has too often been denied to them historically, I think it's also important to value the other end of the spectrum and the less overt demonstrations of strength, which can be sort of a quiet resolve or a subtle resilience, and to honor that in women as well, and to allow them to be strong in that way. And in fact, I think we need to move beyond this requirement that women should be a particular thing, that they should always be strong, because like any other human being, women are allowed to have a variety of emotions. They're allowed to feel overburdened, to ask for help. And we shouldn't presume that when they express these things, that they're any less strong for it, much like we wouldn't commonly assume that with men. So I think it's incredibly important to champion this kind of breadth of acceptance for women, and that we don't actually ask women to qualify for equity. Women deserve to be treated equally to men or to anyone, simply because they are here, because they exist, because they make immense contributions to their families, communities, to their workplaces, and because they form one half of humanity. And a pretty important half, the one that actually is mostly responsible for perpetuating future generations. I also think it's incredibly important for women to recognize that they need to support other women. Women are equally part of a patriarchal system, just like men, and at times can uphold it as much as anyone else. So it's really important that women recognize that and are, as much as possible, supportive of other women, whether those women share the commonalities of culture, background with them or not. That we have this overall solidarity and bond, which can only serve to increase equality for women and for all.
Don't let others tell you what you can and can't do. Only you can determine your own capabilities. And don't fight with others about gender bias. It'll only bog you down in the process. Prove them wrong. Ask for more. Don't be satisfied with the first offer, and you'll never be turned down because you asked for what's fair. And finally, seek out female role models. Reach out to other females in, especially those in empowering networks. Those are available online. And if you seek them out, they'll bring about a change in you and empower the next generation forward.
International Women's Day is a day to celebrate the achievements of women around the world. Today, we applaud the accomplishments of women who have transcended stereotypes and shattered the glass ceiling in business, medicine, education, the arts, and all arenas of life. We show our deepest respect for the mothers, the sisters, and the carers who turn inequality and even violence into empowerment. We cheer for the girls who refuse to allow their worth to be determined by their appearance, and who face the battle day after day to be accepted, not for the ability to conform to small-minded norms, but for the courage to just be themselves. As a leader at Hanson, I want to take the opportunity today to say to our female students that I am proud of you for your bravery in coming to a new country which I know has not always provided you with equal opportunity. To the men who are willing to stand in solidarity with women through what remains an ongoing challenge, I thank you for choosing respect. Today, together, we choose to challenge inequality.